Hello guys, and welcome to the 4th season of Seve Talk, my monthly podcast. I am Séverine Tamborero, professional tennis coach, author, and a creative thinker. This year will be about having a conversation with all of you, some very special guests, and nothing will be off limits. Join the conversation every month at coachseve.com, iTunes, Spotify, and on my YouTube channel. So let's talk. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to Seve Talk. And this time around on this podcast, I have two amazing ladies, people that have been around for the past 2 years, and the conversation that we've been having has been amazing. And the topic is really, really clear and really simple. This time it's going to be on women's and girls. As you all know me for the past few years on this podcast, I had conversation on girls, women coaches, and not, I cannot have that conversation by myself. So I invited two friends. So with me, Erin and Allison. I'm afraid to go on the last names, but I will still do it. So Allisson, McNeil, thank you for being part of the podcast and on Seve Talk.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And Erin, go ahead, Erin. I'm going to let you say it so everyone can hear it properly.
McAleenan.
That's it. McAleenan. Is that
Thank
simple?
you so much, Seve. Appreciate it.
And Erin, that is with us. Again, I always laugh with some friends when I talk about sports. Everyone is always bringing the conversation to basketball. And why not have two coaches that are coaching basketball? So people don't know this, but before tennis, my sport was basketball. So I think it's kind of, it's kind of following me. So listen, I think we have 1,000 years of experience around this screen. Allison, if I'm not mistaken, you went to the 2012 Women's Olympic team. You received also the Jeff Gowen Award for your involvement in coaching and development. Been involved as a head coach pretty much everywhere, NCAA, university, also in Canada. So your experience is amazing. And Erin, the same thing, Erin being involved, young coach, you're younger than us. It's okay. But what a background. And now you have been named, if I'm not mistaken, last year as the head coach of UBC, so University of British Columbia. So a lot of experience. Thank you for being with us. And Allison, I'm going to start with you. I think it will be, great to hear a little bit about your story and why you became a coach.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Seb. You pretty much hit the highlight. So, but I've coached at every level. I actually really have always loved that my job has allowed me to coach at a really high level, the Olympics, their national team, but also I coach grade 2-3. And I'm just happy to do all that because I love it all. And certainly the national team gives you a certain sense of pride and you're working with the best players in the country, but you go into a gym with kids that are probably grade 5 is one of my favorite 10 and 11-year-olds, then that gives you another feeling in the gym. And so I've been lucky enough to do all those levels. I was a multi-sport athlete, tennis not being one of them, unfortunately, but I did volleyball, basketball, swimming, downhill skiing, were my swimming and downhill skiing. So I think I just loved sport. And then basketball just became the one that kind of grabbed my heart. So I think it was a natural for me to leave sport and to move into the coaching ranks when I did. And, I've never regretted it. I'm just so happy to have had I used to joke and say, anybody that can have a job where they can pretty much be in their sweatpants and shorts all the time, that's a job that I like. I'm happy that I've been able to do the gambit of youth development all the way through to coaching development, to high performance athletes, to individual training, to multi-group training. Yeah.
And it's rare to have a woman doing the entire pathway. We'll talk about it a bit later in our conversation. Erin, how did you get into coaching?
Thanks, Seb. I was actually also a multi-sport athlete growing up. I grew up in a really small town on the East Coast. And so I feel like because there were only so many girls in my class that I played, soccer, basketball, and volleyball all through school, but then also was a really big skier and swimmer. Tennis was also not one of my sports. Played a bit of badminton when they again needed a female, in junior high and high school. But yeah, when I went to university, I actually thought I wanted to be a physiotherapist. And then the more that my summer jobs were always working kids camps or some kind of sports camps, I started to realize that, why would I not want to take these summer jobs and turn them into my full-time jobs? So I became a high school science and math teacher and got into high school coaching, both boys and girls. And similar to Allison, basketball was kind of always my number one sport. I grew up around it because my dad was a coach, and so was my grandmother, actually. And then through coaching and for sure, actually a couple opportunities that I actually had to work with Allison when she was the senior women's national team head coach. I just started, it was like that fire of being able to be challenged in a different way by working with, elite level student athletes. And so then that led to me wanting to take my master's in coaching and then pursuing being a university head coach, which I've had the great pleasure and honor, I would say, of being a head coach for the last 10 years.
That's amazing. What a lot of experience here. And the first question I would have for both of you, and it's interesting because you've both been playing and then you're on the other side coaching. Do you feel that sport has changed from when you played to now you being a coach? Erin.
I laugh because, from my personal experiences, it's definitely changed. I think that, first of all, in some ways, I still think that there was so much more free play and like kids were so much more involved in sport. And whether I attribute that to like having phys ed in all of the elementary schools. And so you got that kind of fundamental movement foundation at such a young level, on top of the fact of, again, we didn't have cell phones. I got my first cell phone when I was 22 years old. So, there wasn't social media, and yet technology just was different. And so as a kid growing up, it was go outside and play. And so I think that, the drive to maybe want to be involved in sport was different. And then I would also just say, I think that when I think back to the way that I was coached when I played university, was what we would probably now call a very old school way, right? I think that, again, from my experiences, sport used to be very, do as I say. We want to push you to break you to see, what your limits are, and that is a good thing to kind of really make you, I'll say, more than uncomfortable. Whereas I think that, again, similar to how technology and social media, we've had all those advances equally in the last 24 years. I think that we've also had lots of advancements in coaching and in sport, and understanding, what athletes need and how they need to be supported, and how to be able to create that positive learning environment to, ideally, in my opinion, make sure that they're having fun, which is going to allow them to work as hard as they can, so that they can then also continue to get better and enjoy it.
Yeah, interesting to hear you saying fun, because it seems like it's not a word that is very popular in sports today. And both of you introduce yourselves as saying, oh, I'm involved in basketball, but I've played a lot of sports. That's also a phrase we don't hear today to our youngsters and kids that are playing multiple sport. Allison, do you see it a bit the same way, and the changes through the years?
Yeah, I'm certainly a lot older than Erin. I'm 62, and I see a lot of changes. The social media one and the technology, of course. But I think, my parents on Saturday and Sunday would drop me at the ski hill and go have some parent time. They're like, just drop me at the ski hill and don't come back till it's closed. And I would just hang out with my friends and ski all day. And they, pack us a little lunch, which I probably ended up, I'm pretty sure, either packed myself at a certain age, and they stayed away. And the same thing. I mean, my parents came to all my sporting events that they could come and watch and support, but they never talked to my coach. So I see the parent involvement much more than when I was coming through. And some of that's good and some of that's not good. My parents certainly would have been involved if at any point they thought that I was unsafe in any kind of unsafe environment. But they certainly checked it out. It wasn't like they were complete hands-off parents. They came, but when they felt that it was safe, they let me go do my thing. As with Erin, we played more, but I tell the kids I coach, I played more basketball outside than I ever did in a gym. And they're just like appalled. They cannot believe that could possibly be true. I'm like, no, really, we just played outside because you couldn't get in the gym. Schools were closed. We didn't have a rec center. I grew up in a small town. And you went from season to season to season. So, I would ski all winter and play basketball, but then I would also run track, and then I did softball, and then I was a swimmer. And so I really had a wide range of movement skills and strength. And what I notice now is a lot of the athletes coach are not as strong, physically strong. And I think that a lot of that came from me playing multiple sports. And some of the best athletes I've coached were multi-sport athletes, both at the senior national team level, provincial level, and even the high school kids that I've worked with. So that's what I see. I see that seasons have become one full season of basketball and nothing else. And the kids, I think, are just on this merry-go-round where it's not, as Erin said, fun anymore. They're not getting, I want to say, their creative juices flowing because they just don't have to organize a game outside. They don't get that thrill of like a new season. I mean, I just remember, okay, it's volleyball season. Yahoo! I'll move to basketball season. Yay. Okay. I'm going to run track, and then, summer swimming. That's just, but I always had a ball in my hands also, but it wasn't forced upon me. So that I probably see the parent influence, the full round seasons are the biggest changes for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. And seasons, there's no more seasons. Now it's all year, it's full on. And I remember having a conversation with coaches also on the tennis side where it was about, yes, you need to do multi-sports. It's great, but the kids don't have time. No. And also, like you mentioned, parents are getting more and more involved. There's a perception that because of it, the kids will be more engage and intense and doing the right thing. And for us, a quick story. I had someone coming to the IGA Center, the National Training Center, and past a classroom. I was going around showing, the courts and the classroom where the kids study. And they saw like bicycles and cross-country skiing. They were like, what was that? And we do believe of doing other things than tennis, with those kids and going outside and run. And even with the younger generation, talking to parents where 5 years ago, people were asking me, Seve, what is the second sport, our kids should play? And I was like, okay, basketball, soccer. And now today, my answer is just go play outside. Yeah. Because they're not doing it. Everything is structure, everything is time. And so for us, we try to, into our own sport, change that philosophy. What do you think we should do to try to change something that I'm not even sure we're going to be able to change? Yeah. Allison.
I like what you said. Just get outside and play. I think sometimes that's important. And I understand a really talented female athlete is going to specialize at some point if that's what they love. I mean, I chose basketball, probably the wrong one. I'm 5'3", but that's what I love. So you choose what you love, in my opinion. And so they're going to do that. But I think up till whatever 13, 14, in some cases maybe even 15 for certain late developing sports, you should be trying to do a couple different sports. Can you do 3 or 4 like in the old days with me? Again, I was in a small town, probably not. But it'd be nice to see them get a foundation where they do some gymnastics, maybe some dance, some track, some karate. So, I mean, just like throw your kids in. My parents threw me in a whole bunch of different programming. I always said it was free babysitting, and I got to, get, not free, but cheaper babysitting, and I got to run off some energy. But I think I got a good basis. So I think that what you said is what we can say. Get out and play. And when you have your days off, do something away from tennis, do something away from basketball. I mean, I know we have a couple of kids that they were basketball kids, and they went up to Whistler for the weekend. They said, yeah, and I think it was their aunt, got us a golf lesson. I thought, how cool. Get out there, swing a golf club. That's a lifetime sport. I used to actually put, our friends had a tennis court, our neighbors, and I'd put the ball machine out there, and that was my conditioning. I'd chase it down and just hit that back and forth. And then, but it was a different way to condition, do something different. So yeah, I kind of agree with you, Seb. Get out and do something different.
That's good. I thought you would have said that you put a hoop on the tennis court. No.
No, they didn't allow that.
Erin.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I would also say I think that we're really outcome focused right now. And so, everything is kind of like, let's just say for a basketball player, well, what's going to help me get a Division I scholarship? And that's all that matters. And so, I'm going to go and be on this club team because they're going to play in all of these tournaments. And that's what's going to get me the exposure, that I want, because what I want is just this outcome, as opposed to potentially more focus on, what are my goals in terms of improving? Like personally, have I thought about what I need? So if I want to get that scholarship, but like, what do I need to be able to do to get that scholarship? And maybe just falling in love a bit more with the process and like the daily journey of practice, right? And loving coming to practice. And I would even say that I find that with some of my athletes nowadays, they aren't overly confident in what motivates them, right? So trying to think about, why do you play basketball? What do you love about basketball? What motivates you to want to improve in basketball? But I think that that's potentially because they haven't always been the ones driving the decisions, which goes back to kind of what Allison was saying about the parent involvement. Because I would say similar for me, yes, I grew up in a basketball family, but my parents never pushed me to love or choose basketball. Like similarly, they would drop me off at the ski hill and I loved skiing, and swimming. I loved swimming. And, I loved playing soccer and volleyball with my friends at school. But I chose that basketball was always still going to be my number one sport. But then that was my choice. And then it was up to me did that mean I wanted to work really hard to get better, to try out for a provincial team for basketball? Yes, it did. But I wasn't going to do that for soccer or volleyball or whatever, because they weren't the sports that I didn't love them as much. Right. But those were all my decisions, not kind of my parents saying, well, if you want to be a basketball player, you need to do these things. Or if you want to be whatever, right? If you want to get a D1 scholarship, you need to do these things.
Yeah, such great points, and you're right, and I wonder, if and we see it, we see when the kids are choosing their sports because they're happy, they're smiling, they want to be there, even if it's 3 hours of training, they're going to suffer, but it's for them to suffer in something they like. And Erin, you mentioned and you talked about process, and process, I think, is everything. And I know it's something we had some discussions in the past few years on girls in sports. And, there's different numbers, research. For us in tennis, it's very interesting because we are starting to see for the past few years more and more in girls in our sport. And I think it's a great thing. And I do think that having amazing models at the higher level makes a difference. Having models as coaches make a difference. But what I see also is that we have more girls coming in, but we don't necessarily have more girls staying in. What is your view on this? Like, do you think it's something specifically to a sport? Do you think that we do see more girls in sport, or it's the wrong perception that we have, Allison?
No, I think I'm encouraged to hear you say that about tennis. I would say that might not be the case in basketball, though it's certainly a growing sport. But I see fewer high school teams. I see high school teams. Sorry, that was be my phone. I don't know why. I see high school teams that either can't field a girls' high school team that used to be thriving, or have 8 players on a bench. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And the narrowing of clubs. So I can only play for these couple clubs, as Erin said, with process in mind. So I worry about sport. And I know over COVID, the numbers that came out in Canada said that there was a huge drop off in girls, not as big in the boys' side. I'm also seeing a lot of kids that everything is pre-planned and pre-programmed for them. So they don't even know how to organize a pickup game or call their friends and go to the park. And I think losing those kind of fun times and skills, and that for girls it's harmful. We need to be active. We need to have sport. I tend to think that girls are every bit as competitive as guys are, but I also think at younger ages, it can be very social for us, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why we can't be social and competitive. I think that's sort of normal, and so I would like us to see us make it more social and more fun for young girls. So we have to have different kinds of programs to bring them in. It's not necessarily only the high performance streams for girls. I think we need the fun streams, the streams where you're coming in and you're playing with your buddies, and it's Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and you come in and run around, and then whatever. And I think there's been some success out here in Vancouver with some of the programming for women like that, like open runs and basketball. And so I think we have to be a bit more creative with girls and women in sport, and we have to find ways to get them into sport. And I think a big thing is having more female coaches, obviously.
Yeah, we'll come back on that one, because I think it's something that it's close to our hearts and very important, and we'll have a discussion. And yeah, Erin, again, I that's why I bring the question, because I think what I see in my sport is really not a reflection of sports in general, that it's either in Canada, and I would even say internationally when I talk to friends, around the world. Do you see the same challenges and the same kind of red flags where we are seeing young girls dropping out of sports and not even playing sports anymore?
Yeah. I think that I would say, first of all, for sure, the same what Allison said about the numbers from COVID in terms of how many girls we did lose through sport is super unfortunate. And I would also build on the point about that it is social and or fun. And so I think that coaches of those age groups, which is why it's so amazing and fortunate for, I'll say, the younger people that Allison works with, that they get such a talented, experienced coach who has that passion and that energy and understands, how to help bring that out of them, because that is what's going to keep them coming back and being more curious and interested in it. And I would still then lean towards, if you can't see it, you don't necessarily want to be it, right? And while I commend, the sports networks in Canada, and I think they're doing a better job recently of having WNBA games or even televising like some of the national team games, on TV. It at the end of the day, still the percentage of time that there's a women's sport on a TV network versus a male sport, I mean, let's be serious. It's like such a small percentage. So I think that still, with the fact where I feel that society is overall pretty outcome driven, the reality in basketball is that, the percentage of basketball players that go on to play in the WNBA is so minute. And even the WNBA, although they are making progress, their salaries aren't close to the NBA. And then when you look at even like the senior women's national team players that Allison has coached, and them having to go and play professionally in other countries, let's just say from ages 22 to, well, let's say to 38, but like somewhere in that time, they've got to go live in a different country. Depending on their contract, they might not actually make a ton of money, but at least they get free housing, and they kind of get to travel, but they don't necessarily always make a lot of money. And so then again, the way that top male athletes are kind of glorified, and it's like it's genuinely a career and an option for them. The opportunities in sports for females are so much smaller that, yeah, if you face some challenges at younger ages, there's maybe not that same kind of, okay, well, I got to kind of push through this tough time because look at all of the potential opportunities for me and for other women, right? If I do make it through, it's like, well, there's not a ton of opportunities for me anyway, and it's not fun, and you're just not exposed to it. So I think that can be an easy detractor from them stepping out of sports, on top of, yes, like depending on, I still think coach education, in my opinion, in Canada, so many people think just because they played sport or they watched basketball on TV that they are the best basketball coaches. And, even for me, like I have so much more to learn about coaching, and I'm, consistently trying to learn new things, but there are lots of coaches out there who don't want to take coaching courses and don't want to learn more. And then more often than not, those are the volunteers who are coaching the youth.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, it's so many things. We can have 10 different podcasts right now that you guys mentioned. And number one, and I had this situation. I was on court with some girls, before they went to do their training. They were doing their fitness, and I was with them. And then, a coach came in and wanted to start the training and turn around and said, okay, ladies, it's not time to chat and have a conversation. It's time to work hard and be serious. And right away for me, that's where, one of the reasons why girls drop out, because we cannot seem to get away. And I think the reason is because the only one talking about that is female coaches. We cannot get away, Allison, like you mentioned, that you can be social at talking about a movie, school, the music you like, and go on court and be competitive. Every time is the comment on, oh my God, she's too nice, she's a princess, she's this, she's that. we make a comment, and then we see them competing, and we're like, oh, she can compete. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I hate that say that girls like to have fun and boys are more competitive. I'm sorry, we do have to change that. Yeah. It's unacceptable that and even Erin, you were talking about WNBA and the NBA, and I saw some numbers between Sue Bird and I think it was
LeBron. Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi, comparing them to LeBron.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of the success of the world championships, like gold medals at the Olympics, as well as WNBA and or NCAA championships for that matter. And then their salary in comparison to his. I mean, he just became a billionaire.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then then you say that, but the games are really, really high level. And right away we put a stamp by saying, but the men, they're so competitive, they're really athletes, but the women, they're more doing it because they have a social intent and they're more about the community. And I'm like, no, they're also athletes and competitors. Like, we have to stop putting everyone in a box, because I do think that's why those young girls are probably coming into a sport and then dropping out, because either they don't see the end, they don't see the pathway, and that fun environment, and we're all trying to find solution, is not there anymore. And I think it's a challenge. And so if you would have, like any federation, one or two things to say as a tool, what to do better in a federation to attract those girls and maintain them. Erin.
I'm going to say number one would be coach education, like in terms of being able to, whether it's market it and or mandate it, which I think leads into my second one, which I would say they need to take greater oversight over the club basketball system within Canada. So it is more truly, I would say, a non-profit club system as opposed to a for-profit system, which has kind of people bouncing around. Yeah, I think those are my two main ones, I would say.
Yeah, that's so important. Allison.
I would say ask them, ask the girls what they want. I mean, at the start of every season, certainly not national team, we know what they want. But when I coached high school or like young level club, I'm like, okay, they want to see each other play. They hate when not everybody plays. I'm talking about basketball. So, they want it to be even playing time at a younger age group, because they're friends and they don't want people to feel bad. And I don't think that doesn't mean they're not competitive. I think that means they care about the team. And in a team sport, that's important. But then when they get into practice, they're super competitive. So I think what you said, Seve, we have to change the narrative around women's sport. It is not fun and games. I mean, we want everything out of it. And I think there's guys that I look at the Golden State Warriors right now in basketball, and they love each other. They want to do it for each other, but they are absolutely put up on a pedestal for that. Whereas I see women's teams like that, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they're not tough enough, they're not competitive enough. Look at that. I'm like, really? Because I think that's how you win in a team.
Yeah.
I think that's how you win.
Yeah.
You know, and even in an individual sport, and Rafa, we were talking about Rafa won the French Open, and there he is talking about his team. I wouldn't be here without my family, without my people. Well, that's how life is, and if we can't change the narrative around women's sport with that, we're in trouble, and we should be able to change that. So federations have to change the narrative. I think they have to ask young women what kind of programming, and why can't we offer a multitude of programming? Yes, of course, high performance. There are women that want to get to the national team, that want to strive to be the WNBA. We have 3 in all of Canada. Even though we're ranked 4th in the world, we have 3 players in the WNBA. That's how hard that is. 3. We only have 3. So I think ask them, design programming around high performance, but also have level entry programming, having programming where, it's women come out and have some fun and go up for, nine and dine and wine, golf or tennis, or, something.
Yeah.
We have to offer more.
But isn't that true for both women? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel that when we talk about fun and diversity and making sure like they play different sports, it should be youth sport.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, but it seems like right now that change affect more young girls in the perspective of entering a sport. And even we're not going to go there because again, it would be too long, but it's even the stereotype of which sport they want to play in. Yeah. If you play hockey versus going to a dance so sometimes I wonder, are we moving backwards? Are we really, really moving forward and making changes? Or are we just talking to make sure that we are entering a kind of system and it's cool to have a girls program? It's good to be able to have a female coach into a program, but there's no structure for success.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, any coach put in any position needs support. You have to have your people backing you. And I always say that there's a narrative. So when I coached, especially when I was younger, I was pretty volatile, pretty emotional, pretty excited at high-fiving players and hugging players. And like, I rarely got a technical. I think I had 2 technicals in my entire life, and I deserved both of them. But people said, and so I think of some, college, university coaches, and Kim Mulkey, who's pretty, people think she's crazy. And then Cheryl Reeves, WNBA, she took off her jacket and threw it one time. I must have seen it 1,000 times. Everybody, I'm like, I've seen NBA coaches do that all the time. Tom Izzo, he has great relationships with players, and he's so intense, but they call women crazy or emotional or overly emotional. And I think that's wrong. I think that emotion is emotion, and the way you bring it is not gender-based. I don't think it should be that way. So I think that narrative has to change around how female coaches are supported and what is expected from them. We do not have to be demure on the sideline, though that's fine if that's the way you want to coach. There's different ways to coach.
Yeah.
There are some coaches that are very vocal and very intense. And I think as long as it's not obviously damaging to an athlete or the environment or the culture, then it's A-okay. And you have to know that. So I think, around coaching, the support for women needs to be there. And I think it often hasn't been. And I agree with you, Seve. I think sometimes we're ticking boxes. Okay, we got a female coach, good. We got da-da-da. And I think we have to get past that and realize that it's just good for sport if we have gender equity.
Yeah, and that's a great introduction to the next topic. Women coaches and both of you, and that's where we initially met. Is being mentors, and it shows how you and Erin. I think one of the passion and the quality that you have is sharing. Because I think we would not be doing our job if, sharing and really being involved, that it's either on the coaching aspect, but also with other coaches. And like Erin mentioned earlier, if you want to be someone, you have to see someone. You have to see someone in your position, someone that is there so you can kind of say, oh, I can be there. I can be that person. I can be that leader. Finish that sentence. Women coaches are so great with little kids. What do you think about that? You've been talking about narrative. What do you think about this? Because I thought it was just in my past life, and I continue to hear it, Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it's something, again, that we need to change? Do you think we're using it because it's so much easier to perhaps put the women coaches in a box that we want them or we want us to be, because the high performance is not that accessible? Why do you think it's still there? Erin, I'm seeing your face.
So I think that, first of all, with female coaches, yes, that I would first of all say that in what I see in basketball is that some organizations genuinely want to do a better job of hiring female coaches and providing opportunities. Because in my opinion, it's less about hiring, the female coaches, but it's ensuring that we're also developing them to help ensure that they are ready, and or supporting them, like having supports in place. Because what I find can happen is that they can hire a female coach, give her an opportunity. She's young, she fails, and everyone's like, "Yep, told you. We just should have hired a male." And it's like, okay, but if a male did the same thing, you would have given him an opportunity, because you would have said, "Well, he's just young, and we can develop him." And I do think that there's no way around the fact that for people who choose to have families, that there are expectations that are still somewhat in place, that it is more challenging for female head coaches or female coaches in general to be able to coach if their sport, depending on what time of day, your sport is practicing, because, well, who's going to pick up the kids from daycare or from school, and who's going to cook dinner, and who's going to put them to bed? And of course, again, I don't have kids, but everyone needs a supportive partner kind of no matter what. But I think that there can be more barriers for them, and that still some organizations can see female coaches as more, well, that's great because you're here so that you can deal with the female issues, right? Or, oh, so these girls, like they're struggling with, there's like their cycle, and and so you can just kind of deal with this. Or like, oh, they're getting too emotional, and you can kind of deal with this. And it's like, well, how about we actually just educate all coaches who work with female athletes on things that could be specific to coaching girls and or women. And that's why I always come back to the coach education piece, because I feel like we're doing a disservice to the athletes when we're not preparing and then supporting coaches for the roles that they're in.
So agree. And for me, a coach is a coach. I cannot wait that we're moving away from female coaches.
Yeah.
You're a coach. That's it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this, Allison?
Yeah, well, interesting, your statement, like women are so good with the young kids. And I think it's always putting us in that nurturing role where we can be, we can listen to them and we can help them along. I'm like, well, of course, we're great communicators. That's just a given. But I think communication is a key thing to every level, whether it's, with the youth or with high performance athletes. If you can't communicate, if you're not open to listening, and Erin had mentioned it earlier, that's changed. It's not my way or the highway anymore. It's, there's got to be some cooperation, and it should be. We've changed, so much of coaching has gone in the right direction. So I think with a female coach, just many times I feel like we have to work so much harder to break that ceiling, and we have to be so good. And I jokingly say, be so good that they can't ignore you. And if you're that good and they're still ignoring you, then someone's got to be able to see that. But it does mean being prepared. I mean, as any coach, but I agree with you, Seve, not female or male, any coach, being prepared, doing your homework, making sure that you're the best at what you're doing, being the best you can be. But I just think when we constantly put females into the nurturing role, and I'll give you a quick example. I was working at a provincial team tryout one time, and one of the coaches said, male coach, and he said, I think this girl's really going to overreact when she gets cut. We were discussing, it was a really tough cut. And he said, I think one of you female coaches should take that one. And of course, I'm the oldest coach, older than him too. And I said, well, actually, I think you should take that, because if you think that's going to happen. And he goes, well, I think that one of you would be better. I said, I would not be. I would actually be very unsympathetic with her crying. I would probably not handle that very well. And all the other coaches, there were I believe two males and 5 females or 6 females, all agreed. And so we kind of said, I think it's a good experience for you to do it. But to even have that verbalized, I was actually in shock. I was like, what do you think? I'm going to handle that better than you? Why is that? Why would I handle that any better? We should both be able to handle whatever reaction an athlete has, because we've been, as Erin said, educated. Our coach education. And I think communication, safe sport, all those things are important that we pay attention to them, whether male and female. But there's no reason why we can't, a good coach, male or female, can't coach at the highest level.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And same situation here. Sometimes we are going on tour and it's like, oh yeah, we need a female coach because it's so much easier for them to talk to you. It's like, oh, thank you that you're telling me that I'm going on that tour because I have the competencies. That would be great. Not just because I have a good ear, So, but why is it that difficult? Because we're all say the same thing. Both of you will go back to the mentorship piece. We've been doing it for 2 years. The CAC has been creating amazing programs. That is the Canadian Association of Coaching. It's part of the mandate to continue to mentor female coaches at the higher level. But the stories are the same, that you're either from basketball, tennis, soccer, hockey, any sport. We have those women around a conversation, and we seem to have all the same conversation and the same examples of things that happen to us in our sport. But why is it in 2022, with all the programs, we're trying to have equity, we're trying to have opportunity? I heard a coach recently saying, oh, Seve, for you now is so much easier to get a job. And I'm like, no. So why is it that difficult to break that ceiling, you think?
Me?
Yeah, Allison, go ahead.
I'll start. Well, a couple things. One, again, I think we need more women in administration. I really think we need more women in those positions. So I think lots of times men are comfortable hiring other men that sort of coach like them, behave like them, talk like them, act like them. We might do it a little bit differently, and doesn't mean right or wrong. I'm not calling either one right or wrong. So I think that's part of, if we can get more women into admin, then they would maybe be more open to hiring more women. I do think that we have to, we're still young. I mean, women, we're still young in the coaching. We just are. We're still young. So whoever said to you, oh, it's so much easier now. Well, back in the day, when they weren't paying very much at NCAA women, CIS women, U Sport women, there were tons of women coaching. But then they started to pay. So the men were leaving men's jobs and taking women's jobs because, well, now they're paying. I mean, when Gino Auriemma can get paid, more than some of the men's coaches, Division I, then why would he not stay on the women's side? And so I think that became a real thing, that when the dollars went up, they started to hire some men. I'm also sometimes perturbed, even though I know we're doing the mentorship, that we have to see someone like a Becky Hammond go to the NBA, be mentored under male coaches, to then be lauded as a great coach and then move into the WNBA. Or I don't understand why someone can't mentor under a great female coach and just move directly into coaching. So sometimes I think we're downplaying the top female coaches, and I think that hurts us. We need to play up top female coaches. I mean, I always felt like when I was senior, I was fighting for respect, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know why I have to do that. Like, why do I have to do that? And I don't see, and Jay Triano, my husband coached him, he's a friend. I don't see Jay having to fight for that. Why is that? So I think, we need to promote each other. That's a big
100%. And I know we're going to continue a little bit of the conversation. I know, Erin, you have to leave, and I want to, again, thank you for being part of the podcast and being part of the conversation. I'm sure we're going to do that again. Hope to see you soon on the mentorship program. Continue success with UBC.
Thank you so much for having me, Seve. I feel like I could talk with both of you about all of these topics for hours on end. And I just appreciate and love that you're doing this podcast. And I look forward to hearing the final product.
Thank you, Erin. And we'll talk soon. Thanks for being here with us.
Bye.
Bye. Allison, so I know you also have, a lot of work ahead of you, but I would like to, before we end, for you to kind of, with the experience you have and being around so many coaches, why do you think the mentorship part is important? What is it that we need to continue to believe in it, and that's a successful way of trying to encourage women coaches to be part of the profession, but also to have them continuing and trying to be successful in their own strength into the higher they can get?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think obviously mentoring has been a long time thing in business and sport and in every walk of life, and it's proven to be useful. And I think coaches need mentors, male, female. They need mentors of both genders. They need mentors inside their sport. In another sport is okay. This year I mentored a track and field athlete. I mean, I haven't done track since I was in grade 11, but obviously I didn't mentor her in the technical, tactical part of track. But I think that we need mentors in all those areas outside of sport even. And one of the things I think having a female mentor for a female coach is, as you know, so we talked about this, the validation that you're doing it okay. You're doing it your way. It's maybe a bit different because sometimes we don't get validated for the way we approach things. I remember with the national team, I wanted to have a leadership group before it was cool to have a leadership group. I thought, well, I don't want captains, because normally on teams you have one or two captains. I didn't want captains. I wanted the leadership group. And I literally got pushback, not from the athletes. They thought it was the greatest thing, not from my staff, but just pushback, I'll just say, in general. And I'm thinking, why would I get pushback on that? That's a great thing. But that was new and it was different. And I think it was seen as sort of female, cooperative, and we're going to work together. And I'm like, well, I think we can still compete. So I think, I think one of the biggest things through the mentorship program is that validation that, you're doing it okay. And then we can also bring, at my age, at 62, I can certainly bring to a 30-year-old coach some things that I know have worked for me and some things that they might be able to do. And I can also maybe help them break down a few of those doors and barriers with a little bit of know-how, just because you've been through it. But it's so crucial.
I totally agree with you. And I think even if the stories are the same, sometimes it's good to hear, oh, it happened to me also. Yes. And to have a place where you can have a conversation without being judged. Mm-hmm. And perhaps, like you mentioned, being a mentor, it's about supporting everyone outside of the sport. It's being an ear. It's trying to bring solution. And I do think mentorship, that it's either in businesses or in sport, it's no different, is really, really important. So I hope this is something, it's crucial. We're going to continue. And again, like Erin said, we can have conversation. I'm sure we're going to do that again. So before we leave, for me, music is so important. I think it's so important for all of us. When we travel, I'm sure you had that when you were, playing when you were younger. So if I had to say one song that either brings you back to a special time, either the Olympics or when you receive your award or when you coach one of your teams, or now, one song that is really, really close to you. And why?
Well, just one. Well, I might have to have two, but
it's okay.
Okay, so you're going to laugh at this one, but AC/DC Thunderstruck.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Because my team, when I coached at Simon Fraser University, which was my first head coaching job at SFU, and I coached there for 13 years. I had great teams. I had wonderful student athletes, and they would play that as their song when they came out. And so I just that was the very first group I had up there, and they would play Thunderstruck and crank it, and then they'd play it in the van. And so that became, and it's funny you should say, but I'm working out at the gym this morning and I'm listening to Thunderstruck on my
way.
Phone. Yeah. So that, and I'm not a huge AC/DC fan, but I love that song. And then because I coached during an era that was a lot of grunge rock and that, I love the Foo Fighters, and I love Chris Cornell, Audio Slave. They're kind of different bands, but so I listened to a lot of that. And I think Foo Fighters, probably Are You Getting the Best of Me, or The Best of Me? That might be one of my faves.
So, amazing. I honestly would have not anticipated that at all. So that's great. And the meaning behind it is amazing. Yeah. And for you to even have like those songs still with you, it says a lot to where I always say that music, and it brings you the emotion of the moment that perhaps that music played on, right? So
funny. And then now you say that, I remember we qualified for the World Championships in Brazil, and the Black Eyed Peas, I've got a feeling, I got a feel, that one, that was playing, and that will always remind me of Brazil. And they turned the lights down, and the lights actually went off at one point, and everybody held up their phones, and it felt like you were in a concert, but we were actually playing to qualify for the World. So you're right, music, it does connect you to your sports moments. Yeah. So Thunderstruck was, all my athletes, they came out to that, warmed up to that, and then really the Foo Fighters and Audio Slave and some of the grunge rock was from my second era of group of kids. So I'm a bit of a rocker, and then I really like that Black Eyed Peas song. Yeah.
I love hearing that, and I'm sure everyone listening to the podcast will go and download, those music and say, oh, what is it again? And go and listen to it. But Allison, again, it's always a pleasure. Your experience, your knowledge, everything that you're sharing is, even for myself, as a coach, as a person, it's always bringing me to the next level and understanding of what we're doing. So I really appreciate you being on the podcast, sharing with the community and all of us. So I'm sure we're going to do that again. Yes. And until then, great success back on court with your teams and your players. And I know you're also around and speaking and having some engagement. And I do think, anyone that is listening, to have you for any sport or any situation, to hear you for hours, it will be something we would do again. So thank you so much.
Seve. Thank you. What a fun day. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this month's podcast. Go to coachseve.com in the media section and share your experience, questions, and comments. Thank you guys for listening and being part of the Seve Talk community. Until next time, Seve's out.